It's time for the Phil Ferguson Show.
This is Phil Ferguson, and you are listening to the cleverly titled The Phil Ferguson Show. Benvenuti. Welcome to the show. I'm so delighted that you are here. I am currently, I may have said this before, I'm watching Game of Thrones all over, just for laughs. I was going to listen in Italian and read subtitles in Italian, because before, the first time I went through it, I listened in Italian with English subtitles, and one can easily, at least I can easily convince myself that I understood everything in Italian and I didn't really read the subtitles. We kid ourselves, right? I read a lot of subtitles. And of course, this was several years ago. The box set, I bought season 1 through 5 from Italy, almost half the price of what it costs in the United States, including the shipment halfway around the planet, which is hysterical. But I'm now up through season 5. I just finished season 5. And what I ended up doing was in English, listening to the audio in English, but reading Italian subtitles as much as I could. And every once in a while pausing and going, what does that word mean? And how does that relate to what was said in English? And just, it's just another fun way for me to try to practice my Italian. Other fun things, I don't know if any of you have seen in the past, I've been playing with my hair. My daughter dyed it all purple. And then one day she convinced me to let her entertain herself and make a spiky kind of mohawky thing. But we finally ordered some clippers, and it is short. It's like what you might expect if I was going into the Marines, kind of short. So that's nice. It'll grow out, I expect. It always has in the past. But the long hair, going out in the heat, even if it's just walking, mowing the lawn, or going out and practicing throwing disc golf discs, break a sweat with long hair, I was not enjoying that at all. The other thing that regularly drove me nuts is when I was trying to sleep and I would get hair between my ear and my pillow. I didn't like that. Did not like that at all. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me, because almost my entire life I've had incredibly short hair, but this was probably the shortest ever. Went from the longest ever to the shortest ever. When my wife was cutting it, like we were outside, like 3, 4, 5 inches coming off in these giant clumps. So I have really, really short hair. So I'm good for a few months now in the coronavirus, and I don't need a haircut because we figured out a way on our own. Other things I did mention at the end of the last show, but I wanted to make sure this was up front this time. I had lowered my required minimum assets from 1 million to 500,000 with the idea that maybe I would get a couple of new clients. That worked worse than I expected. And I got quite a few people contacted me, and I'm honored and I'm delighted that apparently so many people listen to the show that want to be clients, but it kind of swamped me a little bit. So I had to close it already. It's closed. So I'm back to the $1 million, and it's a place that I never really thought that I would be, that I'd have so many clients that I'm kind of turning away money, because I'm sure if I went back down to 500,000, more people would hire me. But I have to have it at $1 million, and maybe at some point it goes higher, but there's, out of the general population, a limited number of people that have more than $1 million of assets that want to hire a manager. So for now, that's where I'm at, $1 million or more. It may go higher. Maybe at some point I'll try going back to a lower number, but I was, like I said, honored, delighted, blessed, but kind of surprised and shocked that so many people contacted me over a week or two to say, yes, let me in. I want to be a client. So thank you. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hiring me. And I greatly Greatly appreciate it. I'm going to keep my opening segment here relatively short because we've got a fun investing skeptically rant diatribe on junk bonds, high yield bonds, and how they've done so far in calendar year 2020. And really importantly, how they did at the worst part of the stock market. So just again, a reminder to make sure you know and understand what you own. You should know what you own, even if you've hired somebody else. If you don't know what you own, call them and ask them and have them walk you through it. Schedule an appointment. If they won't answer your phone call, and even if you're not hiring me, send me an email, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. Now, keep in mind, I get a lot of emails, and sometimes the spam filter puts legitimate emails in the spam. If I don't respond to you, please feel free to follow up. I do ask that you do not send any critical information in that contact email. Do not put your social security number. Do not put your date of birth. Don't even put your address, and definitely don't attach any statements. But do include your phone number, because I'll try to find some time and I'll call you and we can chat. If we collectively decide that it's going to be valuable to go over your statement or your portfolio, then we can talk about that, and then you can send it to me. And I'll take a look at it in, 10, 15, 20 minutes, something like that, 30 minutes maybe. And we can talk about what you own and maybe what are the most scary things in your portfolio. Not necessarily that you would have the absolute ideal best portfolio, but if you can get rid of the things that are going to fuck you, that might be the best thing you can do in the short run. And then, of course, you can read the books that I recommend and get better and better. It's a lifelong journey to try to get a more betterest portfolio in the long run. Anyway, so coming up, investing skeptically, high yield funds. After that, we are going to talk to the one and only Seth Andrews. And of course, he always reminds me, he is not the thinking atheist. He is Seth Andrews. He created a platform, a website, a YouTube channel, a podcast that is all named The Thinking Atheist. And his goal is to get people to think. And we're talking specifically this time because he has another brand new book coming out, possibly in weeks, but worst case months. So we'll talk about his book. We'll talk about some of his other books in case you didn't know about it. And, we just talk about some fun life stuff and we solve all the world's problems. So you're going to enjoy that. And so hang on and enjoy.
A lot of people come up here and they thank Jesus for this award. I want you to know that no one had less to do with this award than Jesus. He didn't help me a bit. If it was up to him, Caesar Milan would be up here with that damn dog. So all I can say is, suck it, Jesus, this award is my God now.
This Investing Skeptically segment is on high yield bonds. Just kind of a follow-up to something that I've discussed in the past. It's this idea that in your portfolio, you should have a cushion if you're anywhere close to retirement. I mean, if you're 30, don't worry about it. Doesn't apply to you. You can ignore this whole segment. But, if you're 10 or 12 years from retirement and you have bonds, I like to have a good chunk of those bonds being pretty safe. Nice. That's part of the cushion. Now, I might have a few percentage points in Vanguard's high yield, also known as junk bond fund. And it's a small part, and I understand, and hopefully my clients understand, that specific fund can make a lot, 15 to 20%, or lose a lot, 15 to 20% in a given year. And it's not inherently bad as an investment category, I guess, an investment type, but it should be a small percentage of your portfolio. Because if you have a situation where the U.S. stock market goes down and you have to pull from your bonds, you have to utilize the cushion, which is what it's there for, and it happens to be that the junk bonds are up 15%, that's a great place to take the money out. If you get a situation where stocks are down and the high yield bonds are also down a lot, you want to make sure you have a lot of conservative bonds that maybe are only up 2% that you can sell from. And making 2% in a year like 2019, where the market went up 31, looks embarrassingly bad. But if you needed to take out money in March of 2020, when the U.S. stock market was down 30% or more over just a few weeks, making 2% positive looks genius. So that's one of the reasons to have this granularity and the clarity in your portfolio where you can pick and choose what to buy from. And I will go over all this because this is not an inherently bad investment class. It's how it's often used is done poorly. So I have people send me their portfolios to review, who sometimes become clients and sometimes they don't. And sometimes I have clients that have me manage part of their money and either on their own or with another advisor, they manage things. And so I get to see other things that are out there, not just what I'm looking at. And so I wanted to see, since I've talked about this in the past and I've warned about this, I wanted to see how well some of these high yield funds did. So I found I think this is brand new, article from, what is this? U.S. News? U.S. News? Yeah. U.S. News and World Report, I think is the full name. Hopefully you can just Google this, U.S. News, high yield bonds, and it gives this nice list of all these high yield bonds. And so I went and looked at the high yield bond funds, and each one of these funds is, well, the lowest is 4.46% yield. But some of them are 5, 6, and the highest one is 7.6% yield. And these represent or are like or similar to a lot of the funds I see people having in their portfolios. And again, if you want this category, get a really good high yield fund like the one from Vanguard. Even that did poorly, mind you, but it did way better than these other funds. But if you really want high yield, that's fine. But I have seen people that have half their money in stocks and half their money in bonds, which may be the right allocation for you. And then when I look at the bonds, 70, 80, 90% of all those bonds are in junk bonds. And one of the problems in the industry, and this is one of the things that I have to confront sometimes, but usually I just don't give a shit. So it doesn't bother me or it doesn't become a problem later on. An advisor often does not want to tell a client that if you want safe bonds, you're going to get about 2%, 2.5%, 1.5%. That's kind of what you're going to get right now because interest rates are really, really low. And so the client might say, is there something we can do to get a higher interest rate? Or the advisor might say, hey, why make 2% when you can make 6% or 7% or 9 or 10%, some of these funds? But I didn't pick the crazy ones. I went off this list from U.S. News and World Report of what they call the best high yield bond funds. I don't know how in the fuck they came up with the idea that these are the best. But I can sympathize with the advisor telling somebody that they're going to get 2% in conservative bonds and the person might want more. And maybe that's partially driven by the consumer. Maybe it's partially driven by advisors who are concerned about the consumer. Maybe it's driven by blatant incompetence of the advisor and or even worse, greed of the advisor. Because I picked 5 of these high yield funds. And we're going to talk about them kind of in summary a little bit here. But the first one is Eaton Vance Income Fund of Boston. Okay, I don't know why that has that weird name, but whatever. Expense ratio is around 1%, whereas the Vanguard High Yield Bond Fund is 0.13. So that's a big difference there. Now, this is the highest load of all the funds. All the 5 I'm going to talk about all have a load. This is 4.75. So you're going to lose almost 5% of your money just to get in the door. The yield is 4.88. So you're going to be sitting there for an entire year taking risk, and you're probably going to break even if you're lucky after an entire year. You probably would have been better off as cash. Now, the year-to-date performance, and this is as of me recording this segment on June 1st. So this is very time-specific. Year-to-date, June 1st, 2020, this fund is now down 5.08%. Now, What I also went and looked at is what was it at its worst between January 1st of 2020 and today. And at the bottom, this fund in a very short period of time lost 20%. Now, a lot of that has come back. But the reason it lost 20% is the same reason, I think, and this is maybe me doing a little educated guessing, is that a lot of these high yield bonds are tied to riskier companies. And the way I make this to expression to people, if you have a home, if you have a home loan, or if you had a home loan in the past, and today you could probably get a home loan under 4%. But let's say you qualify for a 4% loan. I now want you to go out and get a 6 or a 7 or an 8% loan and refinance your house. And you'd look at me like I was crazy. Because why in the fuck would you borrow money at 8% when you can do it at 4%? Well, why are companies borrowing money at 8% when they could do it at 2%? Why? Because they're nice? Please. Because they want to help people out with their investments? Are you kidding me? They're doing it because they cannot borrow money at 2%. No one's going to give them money at 2% or 4% or 5% or 7%. They have to promise 8% because some investors fully, completely understand the risks involved with the bonds issued by that company. And they're not going to touch them unless they're given a ridiculously high yield like 8%. And if you want to do that, if you want to buy those things and you understand that, that's cool. It's a perfectly cromulent asset type to own. What worries me is when people come to me or show me their portfolio and 50 to 90% to 100% of all of their bonds are in these type of investments, and they have no idea that there's this association with a higher yield and a possible atomic bomb in their portfolio. So if this bond investment was part of your cushion, what was supposed to provide you safety when the stock market went down, at the very same time the stock market went down, this fund was down more than 20%. I also have here, what is this one? Mainstay McKay Short Duration High Yield Fund. Yeah, great fancy name. Expense ratio 1.05. Again, 3% load. Yield is 5.8. Today, the year-to-date number, June 1st, is minus 5%, 5.12. And its worst, it was minus 18.35. Let's see, what is this next one here? Next one. Where is it? Yeah, Timothy Plan High Yield Bond Fund. I have no idea who they are, but it was on the list of best. The load is 4.5%. So you lose 4.5% of your money right off the front. The yield is about 4.5%. And as of today, it's minus 5.78. At its worst, it was minus 21.73. So again, it didn't do well. And I think, I picked this one from Thrivent because I hate those fuckers. Thrivent company. It's actually theoretically investments for Lutherans, which is hysterical in its own right. But it's let me choose my words carefully. It's a regular underperforming company because they have a captive audience and they have a sales representative in almost every congregation in the United States of Lutherans, and that person sells to Lutherans, by Lutherans, for Lutherans, and a lot of people think, well, since they're Lutherans and they're following the one true faith, they got to be good. So this fund is LBHYX, expense ratio 0.8. It's the only one on the list below 1%. Load 4.5%. The yield 6.48. That's getting pretty high. Year to date, again, as of June 1st, minus 7. And at its worst, and this is the worst in the list, minus 22.92%. So if you needed money out, and this was the go-to fund because your stocks were down 30%, this is down 23%. It didn't do maybe what you thought it was going to do. It did not protect you when the market was down. And the last one here, symbol is PYHAX, Principal High Yield Fund 1. Again, expense ratio 1.06, load 3.75, yield 7.64, the highest yield of the bunch. Year to date, as of today, it's the worst, minus 6.39. But it wasn't the worst at the worst. When the stock market was down, it was only down 20.34%. Two of the other funds were worse than it. One was almost the exact same, and one was a couple points better. For reference, the Vanguard High Yield, a.k.a. Junk Bond Fund, is down year-to-date 3.6. So it's lost 3.6 versus 5, 6, or 7%. And at its worst, it was down 17% versus 18 to 20 to 23%. So even though the Vanguard one still did horrible, because the whole category, the category of high yield junk bonds, did horrible in the last 5 months. So you didn't want a whole lot of it, and you definitely didn't want the funds that I listed. So why does U.S. News list these as some of the best? Why is an advisor selling these to you? Do they not know there's a better option? Do they not care? Are they incompetent and don't know any better? Or are they paid a commission or a fee or a bonus or a vacation for selling these funds? I'm not sure which is worse, that they do it to make money or if they do it because they don't know any better. But in either case, it's a problem. So the nice thing is, while these funds, the 5 that I listed, were down at their worst, a collective average of 20, 21%. They're now down a collective average of 5 or 6%. It's a great time for you to look at the bond funds in your portfolio. It's okay if you have some high yield bonds or a high yield bond fund. But take a look. If all of your bond funds are high yield, they are not going to protect you when the stock market drops dramatically. The very time that you need them, they will not be there for you. Since most of that loss, 3/4 of that loss, has come back, this might be a reasonable time for only a small loss of 5 to 6% to get rid of some of that stuff. And I know nobody wants to sell at a loss, but if a big chunk of all of your bonds are high risk, high yield bonds, you could really take a beating if the market drops again. So instead of worrying about what stocks maybe you should sell, maybe you should worry about what bonds you have to sell so that you're safe in case the market goes down. Anyway, just something to think about, a little discussion on high yield, a.k.a. junk bond funds and their performance year to date, calendar year 2020. The Phil Ferguson Show is for educational purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be interpreted as personalized investment advice. Your investments should be based on your situation, and you should consult with your financial advisor before taking any action. The show may contain ads. These ads are placed into the show by the hosting company after I finish recording and editing. I have little control over the content of the ads, and you should not assume that I support their products or claims. If you choose to support the show via the new Patreon page, that support does not create an advisor-client relationship.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
As a scientist, do you believe in God?
So, in the West, there's 2/3 of scientists pray to a personal God on the expectation it will intervene in their day's affairs. But I can tell you this, productive scientists do not bring their Bible, their scripture, their holy books into the lab because they do not mix there. So they draw a line in the sand and they do one in one place, then they worship on the weekend, Saturday or Sunday, whatever is your religious tradition, there. So to ask whether they can coexist, the answer is empirically yes.
I didn't ask that. I asked, do you believe in God?
Every description of God that I've heard holds God to be all-powerful, very typical, and all good. And then I look around and I see a tsunami that killed 250,000 people in Indonesia, an earthquake that killed 250,000 people in Haiti, and I see earthquakes and tornadoes and disease, childhood leukemia, and I see all of this and I say, I do not see evidence of both of those being true simultaneously. If there is a God, the God is either not all-powerful or not all good. Can't be both.
Good answer. My question of the year.
So I'm. If you have good evidence, I'm good for it. But I'm evidence-driven.
You need evidence.
More
You're
than
a scientist.
I'm faith-driven.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know.
And by the way, to be faith-driven is one thing, but to be faith-driven and try to create legislation on that affects other people who don't share your faith, that's the beginnings of a theocracy. And we have evidence of what that is in the past, and our founding fathers specifically founded this country to prevent that from happening.
All right, everybody, it's that time. We're going to talk to Seth Andrews. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well. Thanks for calling me and letting me hang out. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, it's all good. I just had been thinking we haven't talked for a while, and somehow, despite my inability to produce a book, you have made yet another one. How does that happen? What's the magic secret there?
I don't have a magic secret. Honestly, it's a weird, I don't know about other writers, but it's all or nothing with me. I actually started this new book coming out. It's called Confessions of a Former Fox News Christian. If you want to look at it or get a pre-order or listen to the introduction of the audiobook, just go to sethandrews.com. But I started it like a long time ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I got a percentage of the way into it and totally just lost it. I for some reason, the momentum went away and I became distracted and I was working on other projects and then there was travel and it just sat back there in a Word document. And last fall, I just thought, well, let's take this, let's pick it back up. Let's take another look at it. And it was still like timely and relevant. And I had to tweak a couple of words, but it was still relatively up to date. And I jumped back in and I just had this sort of Cambrian explosion of ideas. You ever do that? Like, it's like either the desert, I have nothing, I'm terrible, I can't do this. It's going to be a very dry creative season. And then boom, the ideas pour out of you so fast that you can't stop. And that's what happened. And so I finished it this spring and it is coming out late summer. And, it'll be book number 4 for me. So I'm proud of it. We'll see how it goes over. My favorite is going to be the people who are political conservatives. Not necessarily, because I go after the evangelical conservatives throughout the book. The theocrats, the Christian activist in government, the God and country NRA types,
Yeah.
So I know they're going to probably hate it. I'm hoping I'll find a few who might be curious enough to actually challenge their own belief. But I'm sure I'm going to take it in the teeth from actual atheist conservatives because I am not. I used to be a political conservative, and now I look from the looking glass the other way. And so I'm sure there'll be lots of people who stop by Amazon, don't read the book, and leave a 1-star review and say, this guy's out of his mind. I'm sure that's going to be part of the equation.
It's funny. On the opposite, I often troll Amazon audiobooks, Audible, for new Italian stuff. And there was a new Italian learning language audiobook that had 300 5-star reviews and one singular other review that was 1 star. And I thought it was too good to be true. And then I got the book and I found out it was too good to be true. And then I found out when I searched for the narrator's name, this person has put out 30 different audio Italian learning books in like 8 months. And they all have
30 in 8 months.
And they all have hundreds and hundreds of 5-star reviews and nothing else. Because this is a pretty niche book. I mean, this is not your newest bestseller from some famous author. This is a guy making an Italian audiobook. And apparently what he does is he reads out of copyright workbooks that you might get from a language class.
Wow.
Including 30 minutes of the table of contents just to have something that's in Italian. So I
actually like listening to stereo instructions if he's reading the table of contents.
It's the table of contents, and then of course there's the part where when you start the exercises and you have to fill in the blank, he reads those. And instead of saying blank, there's just this long silence, and you're like, there's something wrong with the audio. No, he's killing time, man, so he can have a 10-hour product and sell it to you and get $2 for the audiobook. So let's see, other books you have. You started with Deconverted,
Yeah, that's back in 2012. It's sort of my journey out of Christian broadcasting, out of Christianity into atheist activism. 2015 was Sacred Cows, which is more of a romp. It's like just some of the weird, crazy stuff that people do in the name of tradition and religion. And I not so subtly tie some of these more fringe beliefs into mainstream religion because honestly, they ain't all that different. And then I'm a big fan of ghost stories. I do a ghost stories audio podcast every October for the radio listeners. So I did an actual audio book, has 14 original ghost stories, highly produced. That was a labor. That was massively complicated because, I mean, you're doing these, between 15 and 30-minute audio vignettes, and just picture producing a movie, except you're doing it in audio form, and every footstep, every turn of a doorknob, every tap on the window, every weather effect, every voice breath, whatever, it has to be just meticulously, surgically put together to tell the best story.
Now, in the book version, there's no sounds, right? I mean, or do you have little notes for, like stage direction?
Well, the actual book, Audible requires me to have an ISBN listing for a book on Amazon or wherever to be able to have an audiobook. I was looking into, this is an audiobook only, and I just want to release it as such. And they're like, well, we need an ISBN number. And so I produced a Kindle version of it just as a requirement. Don't buy the Kindle. It's 99 cents. It only exists so that I could produce and release the audio out there. Vince DePorter did some great art for the Kindle version. I mean, I'm going to drop 99 cents. Knock yourself out. But this is an audio animal. It was designed to be an immersive, audible experience. And it was a distraction. I mean, I don't know about you, Phil, but I mean, I get tired of talking about religion, the Abrahamic faiths. We've gotten into cults. We get into the evangelical rites. We talk about all of the specific sort of attachments to religion and how they operate and the effects they have. And so, after 500 shows, I find a certain weariness at times, and it always goes away and I come back.
Yeah.
But I needed something else. And, now I'm in this point in my life where I find myself, especially in Trumpistan, where I'm talking a lot more politics.
Yeah.
And people are like, well, you're a great skeptic when it comes to religion. But I wish you weren't as religious when it comes to your politics. And, of course, I'm looking around going, on what planet do you live on? We've got a whole political party is trying to turn the government into a freaking church. You can't extricate religion and politics. And I'll tell you, the candidates are hugely problematic, but I think this one's a no-brainer. Like, I'm on a mission to get Donald Trump as far away from public office and the face of my nation as I need him gone as quickly as possible.
It's one of those weird things when I'm on Facebook or some other social media and someone says, the talking point, don't make this political. I'm actually trying to not make this political. I'm trying to point out facts, and you are lying. And when I counter your lie with actual facts, you accuse me of making it political. It's such a bizarro world that we live in. And now I have lost friends, Facebook friends, recently, over people who I know. Seth, I know these people. I know they're atheists, and I know that they're generally skeptical, but they think that Bill Gates wants to put a chip in my body to get a vaccine for the coronavirus. And I'm like, I don't know where to go.
I hit a wall. I am so freaking accommodating on my comment sections. YouTube, I just leave it. I can even go back.
You can't try.
And on Facebook, I usually let everybody, people will fight about anything. You can put anything up and people will find a reason to argue about it. But it's rare that I'll go through and unfriend, block, whatever. But when I begin to see some of the, especially lately, it's like forgive the long answer, but there's a concept called the 6% event, okay? So let's say you're driving along and somebody cuts you off in traffic. We'll call that, that's a 10, as far as you having a temperamental moment, like you just losing your cool. You start at 0, you're calm, you're centered, and somebody cuts you off in traffic, and that may send you up 10%. But you're still pretty calm overall, right? But let's say throughout your day, somebody cuts you off in traffic, and then the copy machine doesn't work, and then the boss chews you out, and then you've got a problem where, something else happens. You've got somebody vandalizes your house. I mean, I don't know. Things build up, and you get to about 95%. You're like a volcano. You're pressurized. Well, when you're at 95, all it takes is a 6% event to put you over. And lately, I've found myself, and I'm not proud of this, but I found myself at like 95. Doesn't take much before I'm like, I'm done. I'm tired of the noises you make. I'm tired of you shitting all over my wall. I don't have to have this in my own forum, in my own house. We lose nothing if I block you. Have a nice life, click, and you're gone. And I started doing that this week.
Yeah, I've been doing that for months, and it's really made my life better. And the other thing, my wife for 2 weeks did not go on Facebook, and both of our lives were better because she was not on Facebook because
you know what, my free
speech.
You are infringing on my free speech, Phil Ferguson.
The other thing that I notice, I'm in different groups for different interests and hobbies. Like, for example, I'm in a group for the Chevy Bolt all electric car, just because I like to hear stories and learn things from other people that have the same vehicle. And every once in a while, someone gets on there and you think, that's a really trolly kind of thing to say. Is it just innocent happenstance? And so I go look at their wall, and it turns out that almost every time someone has a troll-like comment, you go look at the wall, and they are the best motherfuckers at locking down security. Really? Do they have really good understanding of Facebook security, or is there really nothing else there? It's a bizarre thing, but the between flat earthers and all this stuff, and of course now, and this show will go out pretty close to us recording it, so we can be a little contemporaneous. Now we have Twitter growing a ball and actually putting comments about Trump, and his new thing today is that if there's going to be riots, there's going to be shooting. Yeah. And I'm like, I actually gasp for air. I'm like, what does that mean exactly? I'm scared what that's supposed to mean, and I'm even more scared about what people might think it means. And then Twitter marked it with a potentially dangerous comment, and of course now that gets escalated. And I'm waiting for Twitter just to go, we're done, and to remove Trump, because he'll pop. Yeah. I want to see that.
I think, have we ever seen a more snowflakey human being? For all of the, shooting his cuffs and bloviating and chest pounding about strength and blah, 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 winning. This man is the most thin-skinned, unbelievably hypersensitive crybaby on the freaking planet. And when we saw that the COVID-19 crisis removed the rallies from his equation, right? Because that's where he used to go to stand behind the mic, where the sycophants would just be like, oh, you're amazing. And he would stand there and be smug and receive the adulation of the mob. Oh, wait a minute. That's gone away. So now you've got a guy who is increasingly isolated, who has to have the oxygen of second-by-second worship from his followers. What does he do? He's going to lose his shit on Twitter. And he has not disappointed. He has gotten in a strong field of horror, of horrible tweets and ideas. He's just gotten worse and worse. And so it was nice. I like the idea. I like your notion that Twitter grew a ball. Like, they've become more testicular. Yeah.
and I can already hear the emails I'm going to get, because it's gender specific. But my apologies in advance. Don't write me those
Whatever.
emails.
It's a figure of speech.
Yeah.
The idea is that Twitter did not roll over. Now, they're way late to this party.
Oh, God.
Way late. Like, the party is almost over here, kids. But at least they finally showed up and knocked on the door and said, okay, now where does this go from here? I have no idea.
I would love for them to circle back around, because they did this before, where they go and take maybe 5 million of his followers because they're Russian troll bots that just repeat and rebroadcast any crazy thing that he says. Because I would love for him to realize that his numbers went down by several million in one day, and then give him 2 or 3 days to get over that, and then do it again.
Now, there's an interesting phenomenon at play, and I'd like to hear your take on this, because some have said that it's a strategy. What Trump will do is he will tweet something that seems inflammatory or is inflammatory at face value, okay? So a great example is when he retweeted this cowboy politician who started his speech with, "The only good Democrat is a dead Democrat." And the crowd goes, "Woo!" And they all, right? And then afterwards he adds the qualifier. He's like, "Well, I didn't mean like literally killing Democrats. I know the people are going to misrepresent me. And I mean it's more of an ideological fight, blah, blah, blah." But remember, the mob cheered before they heard the qualifier. So they were cheering dead Democrats. Donald Trump retweets this. So now you and I, who understand how language works and the abuse of the presidential office to promote such language is so problematic, we get that, we raise a hand of protest. He and his followers say, well, come on. The guy said he wasn't being literal. You leftists are overreacting. This causes the quote-unquote common sense conservative to double down in favor of their champion even further. So what I've been hearing is there's a strategy where he sort of throws this bait out, the left loses its shit, and then the hardcore base says, oh, my God, look at the left overreacting. This proves they're extremists. Now we're going to double down on our candidate. I don't know if you've ever heard any sort of hypotheses like that.
It's I don't want presidential Mad Libs. I want a president when he comes out and says something that's his position. I don't want the constant when there's enough blowback say, obviously I was joking. It's chaos, and it allows a situation for that anyone that already dislikes Trump will dislike him more. Anyone who likes him will like him more, and we're stuck. And between us all being stuck, he gets to do whatever psychotic, crazy stuff that he wants to do, and breaks every norm that we've almost ever had with a president, and breaks another. And now he is going to change the law of the land by signing an executive order taking away the laws that regulate something like Twitter. And I would love, because one of the things that theoretically, not that it's actually legitimate or will hold up in court, but his new executive order would theoretically take away some of the protections from Twitter if people put hateful things on Twitter. And I'm waiting for them to come and say, oh, because of this new executive order, we're now subject to being sued for allowing hate speech to be posted. Therefore, we're taking down Donald Trump's account. Wouldn't that be great that they blame the reason for taking down his account is his own executive order?
Oh, yeah. Well, I like as I understand it, he came forward and said, you know what, I'd be whatever, if they kick me off Twitter, whatever, but I'm trying to process the notion of this particular conduit. I mean, when he tweets or retweets 100 times on Mother's Day weekend, and almost none of it's about mothers, right? He's just losing his mind.
Yeah.
So this is only one of the very few conduits for quote unquote expression that he has left. Imagine if that was removed from him.
I'm imagining. I want it to happen. I want to see what happens next. It's like the derailed train cars that are carrying toxic chemical that haven't ruptured yet.
He's a man who is used to total control. I write about this in Confessions of a Former Fox News Christian. Fox News has been so deferential You know, when you look at the hugely highly rated primetime lineup of Fox News, where you've got Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham. I mean, these are all conservative theocrat firebrands, and they're all doing their sort of shtick about God and country, and Trump is God's man, blah, blah, blah. And you know, you see someone occasionally, every blue moon or so, Brett Baer, someone does an unflattering story about Trump, and it's rare. And you see Trump's reaction, and he actually then talk about he wants to start a different news network because Fox News is not, they're not working for me right now. They're too liberal. And I think to myself, this is state television. Fox is almost state television anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, for this president.
Yeah, for this television, for the 2020 GOP, Fox News is essentially an arm of the Republican Party. And so we get into, and it's controversial. This is tough. When you see how different viewpoints view the world. I mean, you and I look at 40 plus million Americans who still support Donald Trump in the year 2020 after the long Olympic level cascade of awfulness that has taken place. And we lament the moral bankruptcy that is taking, this abdication of moral responsibility. But I think it's important to go in and understand the conservative brain, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Yeah, how does that work? Because, I mean, I'm a little bit at a loss, but I mean this in the nicest way possible, Seth. As an adult, you were still a Christian. How does that work?
Well, you can rationalize a lot of stuff when you live in a microcosm. And so when I was a Fox News conservative, it is a statistical reality that conservatives are more prone to get their news about the world, their information about the world, from a single source or a very few sources. So what happens is Fox News and right-wing radio, Rush Limbaugh, sort of become the filters that help to shape your reality. I mean, so I would listen to Rush Limbaugh every day, his first hour monologue, you know, and I would become convinced, well, this country's going to hell in a handbasket, and they're coming for my rights, and it's a war on Christmas, and God's under attack, and those secular humanists are all they do is want to sit around and abort babies and have orgies and blah, blah, blah. You know, you get yourself all worked up, and you convince yourself that you're persecuted. While you enjoy tremendous latitude and liberty, you are still the victim. And this is an empowering thing because now you're David to their Goliath. You're the hero of the story. So then you go home and you watch Fox News and you get even more of that kind of reinforcement where it's always an alarm. They're always talking about the next big danger that's coming. We Christians need to fortify in God and country and America, America, America. The red, white, and blue colors are flying off the screen kind of thing. And it doesn't just inform your reality. That becomes your reality. And that was the case for me. And it's funny, I had to leave religion before I took a fresh look at all of the positions I had about the rest of the world, the death penalty, abortion, gay rights, the role of government, social programs, other nations, other religions. And, it was after you're not looking through that religious mindset, all of a sudden you have to reevaluate because everything looked very different. And I found myself on the much more liberal side of that looking glass.
It's just so much bizarre. As an example, I just saw someone on Facebook said the CDC even says that masks are don't help in relationship to the coronavirus. And I thought, well, that could be possible because Trump keeps appointing people that want to intentionally destroy the job that they have. And I went and looked, and the CDC has great advice and recommendations about masks. And I shared that with this person, and they're like, well, that's not what I heard from the CDC. I'm like, what?
Yeah. Well, if you listen to Trump defend a lot of the things that he will say from the podium, if you'll notice, there's a sort of tick. It just comes out. He'll say, well, lots of people are saying, I've heard from a great many people, He talks about how lauded he is around the world. A lot of leaders say that they've never seen a president. He doesn't name any of them specifically.
Every time I hear a disclaimer like that, I just assume that it's the first time he's learned of this. Like, when he says hurricanes are wet, someone told him, by the way, they have a lot of water in them. And he goes, hurricanes are wet.
Yeah. Oh, influenza kills people. Oh, I didn't know that. But when I think there's an argument from popularity, and I hear this in defense of the anti-humanist that is Donald Trump by many of the people who say, well, if he's all that bad, I mean, come on, he enjoys the support of more than half of the country, blah, blah, blah. And I always thought, is that really the measuring stick for goodness and justice and truth and morality? Is that it's popular? Where does this abdication of moral responsibility come from? I think that there are a lot of people who would, and we've seen it. We've seen it with the evangelicals. They've sold themselves for power.
Yeah.
I mean, Franklin Graham and Jerry Falwell Jr. and Paula White. Some of these people are scam artists.
Well, I was going to say, it's almost like it's finally become clear that they're selling Christianity for power. They were always
to you
doing
and
it.
me, maybe.
Yeah, they were always doing it, but now it's obvious. But like you said, that there's still a good chunk of America that it's not obvious. That
I was talking to an evangelical I'm surrounded by religious people.
I'm so sorry.
And I'm like, look at Paula White, right? Look at Paula White. She's over there and she's saying just bizarre, crazy, just batshit stuff. And she has essentially a hall pass to the White House. She is Trump's spiritual advisor, for Pete's sake. And I see her, she's becoming more and more every day a millionaire. And I think she's a scam artist myself. I mean, you can't know. I look at Kenneth Copeland. Now, it's $750 million net worth, his own private airport, for Pete's sake. He's spitting the virus into oblivion, but the statistics get worse. And I think this guy's just a scam artist. And I mentioned this to a devout Christian, and they're like, but I mean, you can't know that he doesn't genuinely believe these things. And their first instinct was to rush to his defense. Not this person is becoming 100 millionaire on the backs of people sending in their Social Security checks, etc. Their first instinct was to say, well, he may be sincere and he may believe he's doing God's good work. And I lament. I just think, what is it going to take? How can something so obviously wrong not bother people who are supposedly the arbiters of moral authority?
I'm not surprised that we have Newspeak today, but I am surprised that I guess I shouldn't be surprised. It comes from Christianity itself, because anything and everything that Trump does is antithetical to what I thought Christianity stood for just a few years ago, which, that was a show in and of itself. When Trump had the famous line, he could shoot someone on New York, in New York.
Fifth Avenue.
Yeah, on Fifth Avenue. And I think to myself, if only that was what he did. At this point, I'd sell out and say, can we nominate somebody for him to go shoot? I would take that in place of what's happened with coronavirus, just as an example of the people.
Like statistically, the body count would be less if he had shot somebody, and we
I mean, it would be one person, right? Could we have that sacrificial lamb, so to speak, to our golden-haired deity? But anything from kids in cages to the overt racism that people are free to enjoy now as the white supremacists because they're covered, to coronavirus, where studies have come out and said that his inaction or his delay, and the funny thing is, it's not just a delay, it's realizing there's a serious problem, we got to do something about it, and then kind of in a way, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, but brilliantly saying, we put out rules for everyone to follow. We then encourage them not to follow them, But we can always fall back and say, we put out the rules, you didn't follow them. And then blaming the states and then saying it's not our job, it's states' rights. And then actively going and getting, and matter of fact, the state of Illinois, the governor had to fly in on a private jumbo jet, supplies from China overnight, and have the Illinois National Guard at the airport to make sure the supplies got to where they were going. Because Trump and his administration have actually gone, when other states have done this, and not sequestered, but confiscated the safety equipment that comes in, saying, no, this is our job. And then it goes into a warehouse like the fucking Ark of the Covenant in, the Raiders of the Lost Ark movie.
Yeah.
Where's our PPE? Yeah. It's right next to the Ark.
When we have to look at other nations of the world for true leadership, when I hear Merkel speak or Trudeau, you hear an adult in the room, right? Agree, disagree with how they're handling it. You hear and see an adult in the room who does what a leader is supposed to do. It's supposed to inform, motivate, and inspire. And you forget what that's like. Our Overton window has shifted so far. When Obama gave that 2020 online commencement speech, you actually heard something presidential, and I'd forgotten. You forget what a reasonableness and someone who cares about other people and has a desire to elevate others instead of crushing them. We've forgotten what that is like, and I ache for a return. Say what you will about Biden, and I'm not a Biden fan, but I'm going to rush to vote for him against Donald Trump. I'm going to sprint to the voting booth to vote for him over Trump. Say what you will about Biden, but I believe that he represents more compassion, more humanistic elements, more acceptance, more inclusion. He and the Democratic Party, despite their many flaws. So for me, it's an A-B choice. I've got an easy choice in front of me. I'm going to go do it. I'm already listening to the Biden critics who are losing their minds.
It's funny. I had someone tell me that they couldn't vote for Biden because he didn't have devoted followers. And I'm like, I think that's a perk. I don't want a president with devoted followers. I want people that look at the president and say, this is a reasonably good choice. And if he does good things, I'll say it. If he does bad things, I'll say it. And I think what he's done so far is being able to bring different people and different groups together, different politicians together, something we desperately need, because it's not all about him. He is going to be a figurehead for a methodology of voter inclusion, accepting science, honoring our relationships with other countries around the world, things that we have become so accustomed to that keep us safe, and they're all being intentionally broken by Trump and his devotees. And like I said, he appoints people that if I was Putin, I couldn't appoint a better person to lead the Department of Education than Betty DeVos.
Well, this is an argument, and I try not to argue too much online, but, I've been known on occasion. There are people that were like, he's got dementia, or he's a rapist, or whatever, and we can get into those allegations, which I find hugely problematic. You don't want to ever discount the accusations, because so many women have been dismissed when they came forward.
Understood.
But it's fair to say that there's some real problems with these accusations of rape, and I am not going to pronounce guilt or innocence based on the fact that he's a man and she's a woman. I'm not doing that. So I think we, as sort of crime scene detectives, the best we can, have to assess the information, and we have to determine, is there reasonable doubt? And for me, that doubt is still there. It's still a reasonable doubt. I refuse to look at Biden and call him a rapist. And if I look at the party that is not going to appoint theocrats, right, Christian activists, who is not going to try to stack the courts with discriminatory activist judges, who isn't trying to break the rule of law, who is going to be more inclusive to LGBT Americans, who is more interested in minorities and social programs to help the poor and disadvantaged, who sees us not just as an isolated nation, but as part of a global humanity and a citizen of the world. I mean, this is an easy one for me, Phil. This is an easy vote.
Trump has to go because it's not just what Trump has done in the past. It's not the cover-ups. It's the everyday, continuous, when he finally gets a new press secretary and she comes out and says, I will not lie to you. And you're like, what? And I knew it was going to be bad when his very first original press secretary said that, we had the biggest induction ceremony ever for a president and shows the pictures while the ground is obviously half occupied with people. When you start right out of the gate, the first thing you're going to do is lie. There's not a whole lot left for me to go with. But yeah, it's just lie. It's reversal. It's the sun is yellow, the sun is blue, and everyone gets to pick and choose what they hear and what they don't hear. Like the joke, there's always a tweet for that.
I don't think I worry a little bit about this. There's this sort of this false equivalence thing. Like both parties are equally bad.
Yeah.
And as a humanist, I think, how do you get there? There are some people I am convinced. Well, actually, I don't have to be convinced. They've said it outright. The two-party system that we have is broken. I don't necessarily argue that. It's the one we have and the one we must use, but
right.
It's hugely broken. But they just want to burn it all down, like burn the system to the ground. And we start from square one. And with that backdrop, they have decided that no candidate, no vote, no participation. I am going to be the protester out here in the fringe. And I'm like, well, fine, that's a de facto vote for Trump. And I hold to that. And already they're about to lose their minds because I just said that. Because in their minds, they think, well, no, voting my conscience means that I'm not going to vote for either because they're both horrible people. But how do you get to the point where they are equivalently horrible, right? How did you look at them and go, how do you look at the platforms and the parties, what they represent, who they advocate for?
Yeah, that's another category of people that have been quite easily excised from my friends list on Facebook. If we get into politics and someone says, burn it down. Okay, yeah. I'm not warning, I'm not discussing, I'm not counter arguing. They're just gone. They have lost the privilege of communicating with me and my friends because I cannot abide by that position. Also, when people are now coming on, even if they're people I really know in real life, and expressing anti-scientific or inaccurately scientific. I mean, it's not like, oh, we're arguing about a steady state or an expansive universe, where there's room for scientific discussion. When someone comes on and says, masks actually make it harder for you to breathe and you could get hypoxia and die from wearing a mask. You know what you could get hypoxia from and die? The coronavirus. I mean, it's this bizarro world where they hear things and they spread things that are anti-factual. I just can't do it anymore. They're gone.
I haven't been blocking those people. I usually will go in and it's an opportunity for someone to correct the record and then that can go off and they can do. It's usually someone who's just, they're just part of Trump cult. I mean, they're just parrots for Trump. And if you come forward and issue a specific list of you come forward and you're not just throwing one-liners and memes out, but you're like, I oppose this, I oppose this, I oppose this, I oppose this. As a humanist, I must stand against this man. And they scream, TDS, Trump derangement syndrome, blah, and they begin to lose their minds. And that's all they do. They're gone. Yeah. I had somebody the other day who they were an easy block. They came on. We were talking about this horrible, horrible death, George Floyd.
Yes, in Minneapolis.
And how I feel that police need to be tried as killers.
I agree.
And somebody else came forward, and before you know it, they're talking about Hitler. Okay, it always comes back to Hitler, right? Yeah. And somebody in the comment section actually said, well, I have no reason to judge Hitler. He doesn't affect my life. He's dead. So I have no problem with Hitler. And so I'm trying to digest this sentence, right? Okay, hang on just a second. All right. So someone must be alive for you to have a problem with who they are or were as a human being. Okay, that's interesting. And so because he didn't do anything to you personally, you have no problem. So there's an abdication of moral responsibility in the wake of the deaths of millions of human beings. Okay, fine. So then somebody else comes in and comes to his defense. And I'm just like, fuck it. It was just like, I'm done. I mean, the minute you say, he actually said, I've heard that Hitler was a good guy in his life personally. And I think, how do you get there? How do you get to a point where what you're thinking about is not the mass murder of 7 million Jews and I think 6 million Christians. But your first thing is to be like, I heard the guy was awesome at a party. Block. Just get out of my house. Just get out of my living room. Damn it. I've been doing a little bit of that this week, some house cleaning.
And of course, some of this and more can be found in Seth's new book, Confessions of a Former Fox News Christian.
I want to make something clear.
Yeah.
Though, okay. I don't want an echo chamber. This is the first piece of horseshit they throw right at. Well, you just want an echo chamber where people just validate your opinion. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Because I'll post something. I've posted things, and I've been corrected publicly. Hey, Seth, this is factually wrong, or the source is wrong, or the headline is wrong, or the data has been updated, or there was an apology. And the first thing I do is I go, and I will usually delete the old post to make sure it doesn't mislead anybody, and I'll make a new post and say, I made a mistake. Here's what the mistake was. Thank you for helping me clarify the record. And I like disagreement because I think it sometimes can help us to sort of sharpen our perspectives. Removing toxic people, toxicity from my living room, so to speak, my online living room, is not me wanting to be an echo chamber. It's determining how much bullshit and awfulness and toxicity I will allow in my space and community. And so, it's not that I don't ever want someone to come in and disagree, even have a controversial opinion. I'm all about discussions. I'm a speech guy. But the second you are sitting there and shitting in my living room and that's all you do, you are an easy block. You are going away. Have a nice life.
It's funny because I have explained it to people the same way that my wall is part of my house. It's my living room. I've actually used that phrase. And as an example, I have one cousin. And I posted something and he comes on and he's like, no, you're stupid. And I'm like, okay, that's not a different opinion. That's just a bold-faced personal attack. And I delete it. And on a regular basis, my wife is like, why don't you block him? And I said, because I know he sees what I put up. Because he responds to it every once in a while. And I might be the only voice that he ever gets to hear. So I can keep him in check a little bit. But there are other people that I'm just like, no. And unfortunately, by me leaving or kicking them out, some ways I push them deeper into their own bubble, which is an inherent problem of Facebook.
Intolerant. Yeah.
Well,
I like the idea of people in my personal circle, who happen to choose to, browse my page, which I'm sure grieves them to their marrow because many of them are evangelicals. I just think it's healthy for them to know that I'm out here.
Oh, absolutely.
It's healthy. They need to know somebody's out here who thinks that all this over here, who thinks Fox News is bullshit, who thinks Trump is a horror of a human being, and who will publicly take that stand. So, that's not my problem. It's hard, Phil. Sometimes there are actually times when an online discussion will produce something positive, but it doesn't happen very often. Have you noticed? Here's an example. How are we doing for time? Am I wasting your time?
I don't give a shit.
Okay.
This is
a dumb one.
Yeah.
This is a dumb one, but it's an example. Okay. So we have a dog park here in town, and they opened up, and I subscribed to their Facebook feed or whatever. And somebody went and they said, look, I was at the dog park, and some lady with 2 dogs, her dogs came and attacked my dog, and it was very traumatizing, and she was very rude. And I don't know who to call, but this needs to be a place where, aggressive dogs cannot be. And so it was a reasonable post, but very direct. And other people said, yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. With the dogs look like this, and they're this, and Australian shepherds, and they were not well behaved, and blah, blah, blah. So people are pissed. And then all of a sudden, the owner of the dog pipes in, and she says, these were my dogs. Now, she apparently had had time to calm down and get some perspective. And she said, I am so sorry. My dog is a rescue, has a nervous disorder, something we have been working on. Apparently, it was a bad idea to bring the dogs to the dog park. And I'm so sorry. I won't do it again. But know that, this was our attempt to try to integrate the animals who had been through an abusive situation. And so I apologize for any harm that we may have caused. It was really a beautiful kind of response, and it de-escalated. Now, did everybody around this person pile on? No. What they did was they said, I've got a rescue who had a nervous disorder. Are they on medication? Have you tried this? There are certain steps and procedures that we've had success with. And someone else said, can you shoot me the name of the medication? Let me see if the dosage is what is recommended. And this community of dog owners all came in after this sort of dog attack, and they began helping the owner try to solve the problem with her animal. And it gives me hope, Phil, because I think occasionally it is possible for people not to pile on and vilify and divide and freak out, but to start seeing their own humanity and the humanity of the other person and say, okay, wait a minute. How do we find common ground, and how do we help each other? It is possible. I sure like to see it happen more. How? I do not know.
Yeah. Well, and I think, as we get near the end, a message of hope and hopefully another idea is kind of assume the best of someone who's making a post and comment on your wall, at least to start with. Assume that you've misunderstood. A lot of people, and I know I'm a victim of this myself personally, lack sufficient writing skills, or I'm trying to be funny or sarcastic, and often that doesn't work on Facebook. Forget about Twitter. There's just not enough space to flesh out what I'm really trying to say, and I try to be cutesy, and it can be misinterpreted, and so can other people. And, of course, you have books to sell. Where, again, can they get this book?
Oh, you can just go to my personal website. It's a pre-order right now because the book itself doesn't release until later in the summer. I've been saying August, but it may be sooner. But I'm doing an autographed pre-order. So anybody who orders it in advance and doesn't mind waiting a few months, I'm actually going to ship some boxes of books to my house, and I will just personally autograph it, and you can say how you want it signed. And you can go to SethAndrews.com. And there's like a sample. The introduction of the audiobook is there, and you can listen to it.
And of course, this book should cost $40, but it doesn't. It's not even $30, right? It's how much?
I've got it priced at the paperback is about $18, and the hardcover is $8 more. I will say that if you happen to be an international listener on the internet, don't buy the pre-order. Like, I'm not freaking Amazon. They don't give me, I don't have a hub in the UK and Canada, so I can't ship the book economically. Like, the lowest price that the shippers give a guy like me is like $22, meaning that the book is often less than the shipping.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Just wait till it comes out at the end of the summer and get it on Amazon. You don't need the autograph that bad. And a lot of people are waiting for the audiobook because they enjoy like the radio podcast, and they like the way I sort of approach my materials. So, they're going to hang back until the summer, late summer.
I love audiobooks just because I have issues. I can't sit still long enough to read a physical book generally. But
I'm out walking, driving. I like audiobooks too. So I totally get it. But you can go to SethAndrews.com to pre-order, get details, bookmark it for later in the summer if you want to get it on Amazon and Audible.
Very good. Well, Seth, thank you so much for coming and hanging out and helping me fix all the world's problems. I appreciate it very much.
That's what we do. Hey, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Phil. Thanks again.
All right. Bye-bye.
You're listening to The Phil Ferguson Show.
Again, thank you so much for listening to the show. I greatly appreciate that you're here. I mentioned in the way beginning, well over an hour ago, about learning Italian. I've still been working on that. One of the things that I discovered is that I learned, or at least I started learning Italian by sound. Pimsleur, who should be paying me to run fucking commercials for them or I should get commissions from all the people that buy the product. Absolutely number one, and this applies to almost any language that you might want to speak. Pimsleur, Pimsleur, again, they should pay me, is the absolute best. It is not going to teach you how to read. It is not going to teach you how to write. It is going to teach you how to speak the language you're trying to learn, and it's going to teach you how to hear the language you're going to learn. The very first time we went to Italy, I had only practiced for 5 months, and I could have conversations. Okay, kind of, sort of. I could grunt out partial sentences. How's that, to be more fair? But I knew numbers and places and things, and I could say words well enough that, given enough time, I could think of the words to say that people would understand me, and that was really cool. The single biggest problem I had is that I might think for 3 or 4 or 5 minutes to put a sentence together, and then I say the sentence. The biggest problem was that the sentence sounded so good, they assumed that I was really good, fluent even, and then they would just talk to me at 100 miles an hour, and then I was fucked. So, but the new fun thing that I'm doing now is I found someone. The program's called Italy Made Easy, in case you want to learn Italian, and it's only for Italian to English. But this guy's been teaching English speakers how to learn Italian. He's been doing it for over 20 years. And he started off making all these YouTube videos. And now he's putting together classroom stuff, YouTube stuff this is not YouTube, but videos you can watch. And so while I had gotten to the point where people just assumed that I'm fluent, which would cause me problems, there was a lot of stuff, weird stuff, little stuff that I didn't know. And so for me, the big part of this classroom stuff was to learn the grammar. So I'm learning all kinds of things about grammar, things that I don't even know about English. Because quite frankly, when I was in high school and the one class that I had in college about English, I didn't give a fuck. I didn't know what pluperfect meant. I didn't know what a gerund was. And now I'm learning quite a bit about English, but I'm learning about Italian and different verb tenses and different stylistic approaches and how you format things and structure things, and having a great time with that. And sometimes they cover something and I go, oh, I already knew those words, but I didn't know why I used them there. So it's been very surprisingly rewarding that I'm having fun learning grammar, because I hate grammar, at least conceptually in English. So been having fun with that, and I'd love to go back to Italy and practice some more in person, but this program also offers the ability to speak to Italians for 25 minutes or 50 minutes, for a fee. And you know what? They're spending their time helping me out. So I think I'm going to try that and check that out. So anyway, that's where we are. It is June 2020, and this is I don't even know what show this is, 343, I think. I hope I have that right. Can't hardly believe that I figured after a year or so of doing this show, I'd run out of topics, but there's always new stuff. If there's something you want me to talk about as far as investments or business or finance or politics or religion, you may send me an email, Phil@Polaris Financial Planning. If you like the show and you appreciate it, you can go to patreon.com/Phil and make a contribution. You can pick $1 is the minimum. I think the highest tier I have is $6.66. And it's just a nice little way to say thank you for making the show and encourage me to keep making shows. The other thing you could do is leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or Stitcher. I think those are the only 2 places that I'm aware of you can leave nice reviews, and I always appreciate that. Again, thank you for listening, and I know we're still all stuck at home, so I'm not going to any conferences. Fingers crossed. I got my fingers crossed. Hopefully this fall, either SciCon or FFRF conference will actually take place, and I can go to one or both of those, but I'm not particularly optimistic. I kind of think, unfortunately, there's enough Americans that just really still think the virus is a hoax and the numbers are bullshit, that none of us are really going to be safe to go out in any meaningful way, I guess. Maybe. I hope I'm wrong. Yay. All right. But I do, maybe next year. We'll see you somewhere in person. If you do see me in person, please come up and say hello. I look forward to meeting you. Until then, ciao.